Reporters are only as good as their sources. Be sure to select sources that are relevant to the story. You don't want to interview someone about a major local news event if the person is visiting from another state and has no idea what's going on. Always check your sources for accuracy. The person you interview might be mistaken about something, or the person could be straight up lying to you. Either way, you should never take everything at face value. Double, or in some cases triple check what your source says, just like everything else in your story. Balance your stories for fairness. If you're doing a story on a new dog park, for example, talk with people happy about the park and those upset with it. You want to represent both sides of the issue. Remember that how you feel about the new dog park and its location is irrelevant. Finally, always ask your sources what else might be going on of interest to get tips on other stories. The more sources you use, the better your reporting will be. Sources help provide depth for your story. More sources equal more information and insight to share with your readers. Sources also provide context. Readers broaden their understanding when you approach the topic from different points of view. Your first source might think the new dog park is great, but what about the people living next to the dog park, and what do they have to say about it? Finally, sources provide reliability for your story. Remember that sometimes your source can provide you with bad information? Well, having multiple sources decreases your risk of the information presented being inaccurate or biased. So who are these magical sources and where do you find them? Just with story ideas, you find sources everywhere. Newsmakers are those who take part, willingly or not, in news events. The survivor of a car accident, the softball player who scores the winning run, the teacher who wins an award. The story is about them, so they should be featured prominently in it. Now, spokespeople are those designated to speak for a company or organization. Some companies discourage their employees from speaking to the press, so an official spokesperson might be the only one willing to talk to you. Experts are people who know a great deal about a specific topic. Many schools, Durham Tech included, maintain a list of experts on various topics. Your Sakai lesson page for this week lists some local and national experts and their lists that you might find helpful. Official records contain a wealth of information. These include police reports, 911 call logs, lawsuits, proposed legislation, property and tax records. Reference material refers to encyclopedias, dictionaries, almanacs, or phone books. Most of this information is now available on the internet. And finally, ordinary folks, or the person on the street interview, provides information about what the average person might feel about a proposed tuition increase or new bus routes. Quotes from ordinary folks add authenticity that resonates with the readers. Once you have the information from your sources, you need to know how to present it in your story. Attribution means citing your sources, attributing the information you receive from them. It shows the reader that you're reporting rather than just coming up with it on your own. Now, sometimes you might deal with anonymous sources, people who will only speak to you if you promise not to print their name in the newspaper. While highly discouraged, an anonymous source may be the only way to get information into a story. Using anonymous sources can undermine your credibility, which is why they should only be used in extreme cases. At some newspapers, only the editor can approve using an anonymous source. Now, if you promised a source anonymity and your editor disagrees, you cannot print the information. Many years ago, one of my students was interviewed by the campus newspaper in a story about roommate disputes. The reporter promised not to print her name, but the editor disagreed, and my student ended up being quoted in the newspaper complaining about a roommate she was still living with. When the reporter learned that the source couldn't be anonymous, my student's quotes should have been left out of the story. Now, a final thing you need to keep in mind is to question every source's reliability. Be wary of everyone. There's an old journalism saying, if your mother says she loves you, check it out. Never take anything at face value. Whether the source is mistaken or out and out lying to you, it's up to you to determine the real facts behind the source quotations.